All right, psychology nerds, and welcome to another episode of Psychology and Stuff, the podcast from Good Cause Productions at the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay. I'm your host, Alison Jane Martingano, and today we're joined by Dr. Abigail Nehrkorn-Bailey. Abby is a psychology professor here at UWGB, actually hired at the same time as me. Her research focuses on the adult development and aging with a specific emphasis on health promotion. Much of her work is focused on adult physical activity engagement and exploring the motivational barriers to engagement. More recently, she studied the impact of negative views of aging, awareness of age-related change, and age stereotypes as specific barriers to physical activity. She's here to do a myth-busting episode with me today on aging and some of the false beliefs around aging. So, Abby, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So, your expertise is in aging. Can you tell me, what got you interested in that?
Yeah, so I got here kind of through a long path, I'll say. I started out actually as a bio major and, thought I wanted to work with whales and everything. I grew up in Missouri, so, super... clear why
in another
that made
life
sense.
You're a whale scientist.
Yeah, no, it didn't work out.
Okay.
It didn't work out. So I quickly realized, being from the Midwest, biology, marine biology was not it. I don't like fish. So that was clear. So I pivoted. I went to psychology. And I really liked it. And so I was trying to figure out where in psychology I wanted to be. I did some work with a cognitive psychologist. I tried out clinical psychology. And I was like, nah, this just isn't it. And then I took a developmental class. And being able to explain why I did things when I was younger or like making sense of things I did at that age and it making sense was just kind of like an aha moment for me. So I thought it was really fascinating that I could explain and understand some of my previous and current behaviors. So I thought that was really cool. So I talked to the only developmental psychologist at my undergrad, and he was actually doing more cognitive work. So I worked with him, but really kind of explored the different areas of development. And as I was talking to people and telling them that I was interested in developmental psychology, consistently, I always was met with the response of, oh, so you want to work with kids?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I don't know. I don't know if I want to work with kids, but I enjoy the principles of lifespan development. And so that kept happening and going on. And I'm like, well, why do people just assume that I'm wanting to work with kids? Like, there's so many other stages of the lifespan.
I made this assumption the first time I met you as
That's
well.
okay. That's okay. And it makes sense. Kids are great. I have nothing against kids or child-focused developmentalists. But it just got me thinking about the other stages of the lifespan, specifically thinking about adults, and how there really wasn't a large focus necessarily, or at least in conversation, on adult development. So I started looking into that, and I'd always been interested in thinking about like what I was doing previously and how that would affect me in the future. So that sort of interest kind of, was beneficial, I think, in terms of thinking about my future self and adult self. And I really enjoyed health. And thinking of health promotion and healthy aging, I really liked that. And so I started thinking about different behaviors that we do that would have a big impact then on us in the future. And so that's how I really got into like physical activity and self-efficacy. And so it really kind of came out from this sense of there wasn't a huge focus necessarily on people thinking I'd want to work with adults. So kind of a weird route, I say, but in the end, I love it. I love working with middle-aged and older adults. Again, kids are great. Research with kids is so important. But I love trying to bring a larger focus also to adult development and healthy aging, especially now that we know so many more people are getting into older adulthood and so many more centenarians or people who live to be 100. So I love it. I still get asked a lot like, oh, what age of kids or infants do you work with? And so it just kind of, reinstills that passion that I have of like, hey, we've also got this other end of the lifespan too.
We matter too.
We matter too.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, sorry, kind of a long story there, but kind of a weird route that I got to it. But I'm so glad that I did.
Yeah. So tell me, what are you doing now?
Yeah. So like I kind of alluded to, I do a lot with healthy aging, health promotion. And so I kind of started off my work doing a lot with like physical activity, self-efficacy, or a person's belief in their abilities, and looking at connections to like chronic health conditions and such. And then really in my postdoc, I got interested in looking at views of aging, or how a person views the aging process, older adults in general, and how that viewpoint or that perspective can then also influence our health trajectory, different health behaviors and such. And it's relatively a newer area of research in the broader realm of research. And so in my mind, that makes it even more exciting then, because there's so much that we're still learning, and we continue to learn from any kind of research, as you know. But so focusing a lot on views of aging and how like negative views of aging have a really significant impact in a negative way on our health in comparison to having a more positive outlook on the aging process. So my lab here, the Healthy Aging Project, HAP Lab, we are actually conducting focus group meetings. We have been for the past year or so with middle-aged and older adults to learn more about their awareness of health-related change, so that eventually Dr. Joe Morrissey and I, who are collaborating on the project, we're going to create a new questionnaire looking at awareness of health-related change, because that's kind of an area that is lacking. The measures out there don't do a good job of assessing health changes, people's awareness of those changes. So that's what we're working on right now. So we're trying to finish up focus groups, and then we're going to be doing some content analysis and building up that questionnaire, and then that'll take lots of testing and such. So kind of a pathway there.
Yeah, ambitious project.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
So if I'm understanding this right, it's not that some of your focus is on how aging, getting older changes our health, but more importantly, how we think about aging has an impact on our
Absolutely.
health. Well, that just segues beautifully into what we're going to do here today.
Right.
So we're going to bust some myths about aging and maybe hopefully correct some of those misconceptions. All right. So myth number one that we want to bust. Aging is all about decline.
Yeah.
So tell me how that's wrong.
So many ways. No, but it is something so commonly viewed or believed in our society. We're a very viewing age in a negative way society. So in our society, people see what's young is good, or youthfulness is important.
Right. My dad told me I peaked at 21 and it was all downhill from there.
Oh, thanks, Dad. Yep, thanks. No, so I'm going to say that we don't have to see it that way.
Right.
So the idea, is that the myth comes from this sense that youthfulness is what's important and that's what's good. We see all these anti-aging products and people just talking about like, oh, once you get older, it's all downhill from there in, I guess, every way possible, but that's really not the case. I mean, for social, psychological, physical reasons, we can see things are still good. We see in terms of cognition, like crystallized intelligence can remain stable and even maybe slightly increase up through middle adulthood, and not until like the oldest old would we start to maybe see then some decline.
What exactly is crystallized intelligence?
Yeah, so we can think about maybe like world knowledge, or facts, that sort of information. Yeah, knowing stuff. In general, we know that explicit memory, we're more likely to see some decline. So that would be like episodic memory or semantic. And we can see maybe there's a bit more decline in that episodic. So thinking like, what did I eat for lunch yesterday?
Oh, God.
Yeah, right. Like it's hard for any of us, even if we're 21 and according to your dad at our peak. But versus,
I did have a great hairdo at 21.
Excellent. Okay, well, that's part of it. So, but I think your hair looks great now, too.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
I just got it done yesterday.
Yeah, love it.
All right, so we remember more stuff, or we know more stuff as we get older. Is there anything else that it gets better or doesn't decline at least?
Well, yeah. So in general, we actually see that life satisfaction and marital satisfaction can increase.
Yeah?
In middle adulthood, actually into older adulthood. So yeah. People generally focus more on the positive emotions, focus more on just things going well in their life. They tend to focus less on the negative things. And we see cohabitation is actually increasing in older couples, and older adults who are cohabitating actually have better relationships than cohabitating younger adults. So there tends to be better fairness in the relationship, fewer disagreements. So that's all great. And we also see just different types of emotional regulation. And we can talk about that, especially I know you have a point later on kind of thinking about like loneliness and depression. But older adults just have a better sense of like, these are the people that I really enjoy or that mean a lot to me. So I'm going to focus my efforts on spending time with them. So it just looks a little bit different, but it's not as though everything is declining. We know we can pick up new things, new hobbies, new activities. Doing a little bit of something can still bring some benefit. So I do a lot with physical activity, and you can start a physical activity routine at any point in time. Again, you can tailor it to what your abilities are, but even a little bit is going to be more beneficial than nothing. And we do see this capacity to learn and to grow, even in older adulthood.
That's fantastic. And that is actually my myth number 2.
Excellent.
That you can't, or your ability to learn
Yep.
declines over time. And I remember, I think, being told that, you have the most neurons in your brain at a certain age. Maybe it was like 21, 26, I don't know. And then basically it's all down here, and you're just going to lose brain mass and everything's going to atrophy. Is that true?
No, okay. Not necessarily. So actually some recent research has emphasized we're seeing this neurogenesis, or the generation of new neurons, even in older adulthood. And there is still a lot we don't know about, like how long that lasts, or that it might be only in specific brain regions. But it's still the fact that we're seeing these new neurons being generated, which is so cool. We also know that we have plasticity. So there's this ability for us to continue to learn, to grow, to have this reserve capacity almost. And we can see that in a neurological sense too. And actually one of the, if not the best thing we can do for ourselves to preserve our cognition as we get older is to learn something new. Pick up a new hobby, some new activity where we're really pushing ourselves cognitively. That's really going to be probably the best thing we can do. Especially like 10-ish years ago, there was this whole, new trend of focusing how crossword puzzles or Sudoku.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, that's going to be what, protects our cognition. Hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that by itself isn't going to be enough.
Okay.
Doing crossword puzzles, doing Sudoku, that's not going to hurt us or hurt our cognitive skills, but it's likely not pushing ourselves and our cognitive abilities to the extent that we need it to really act as a protective piece. So picking up a new language, learning how to garden, or just doing something you've never done before, that's really what's going to be best.
Okay, so it actually does have to be like a real challenge almost.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to bring in the muscle metaphor here. So right, like so you're wanting to improve your cognition. You've got to get to that difficult exercise. You've got to challenge yourself, and like maybe doing the Wordle every morning, which me and my dad both love to do. isn't necessarily enough of a challenge to really build that skill set.
Correct.
All right. So if you had any like things that are enough challenge, you mentioned learning a new language, and I'm immediately, oh my goodness, that is hard.
It is.
Does it have to be quite that hard?
So no, maybe not that hard, because that is really hard. I've tried and given up so many times because it takes a lot of commitment and a lot of time. So it doesn't necessarily have to be learning a new language. But like I said, learning how to garden, learning how to cook. What are some other things? Maybe taking on a new position. Something like that, where you can pick it based on what interests you. But the idea is to really do something that's pushing yourself, where you have to learn new information and then apply it in some new meaningful way.
All right. So we can't get too lazy and just do what we enjoy. We need to continue to push ourselves throughout our whole lives. It sounds like.
Continue to do what you enjoy.
Okay.
But then also take it then to that next level.
Yeah. All right. Wow. All right. We're going to move on to myth number 3 here. Which is all older people are lonely and depressed. You touched on this earlier, so I'm guessing that's not true.
It's not true necessarily. Again, I think there's this stereotype that as you get older, things just decline, and what you're going to be left with is a lonely and depressed older adult. And that's not necessarily the case. So we can see, of course, like elements of loneliness, depressive symptoms and clinical depression in older adults. But we can see that, with other age groups too, right? So roughly 1 to 5% of older adults do experience clinical depression. And those numbers, as we can think about at other life stages too, may be off in that we don't have all of the cases. Not everybody is reporting. But just to kind of put it into perspective, so roughly 1 to 5%. That's not 50%. That's not 75%. Even though the numbers are likely off, it's still not the majority. Loneliness the risk of loneliness does increase in older adulthood, just given some different challenges when it comes to maybe like where a person lives, if they are in an assisted living facility, or if they're living on their own and they don't have a car to go and see somebody. That can increase the risk. Potentially if their partner has died, that can increase the risk. So there are those different pieces that can increase the risk, but inherently just being an older adult does not mean that you're going to be lonely. And yes, like I alluded to, we see that the goals, the emotional goals as we age change a bit. According to Laura Carstensen, a big developmental researcher, she said that based on our future time perspective, that really changes what our goals are in terms of being with other people.
What is a future time perspective?
Yeah, sorry. So kind of thinking about how much time do I have left? So generally, if we are a fairly healthy young adult, we probably have a pretty expansive future horizon ahead of us.
Sure, I plan on living for a while.
Exactly.
Right.
So at a younger age, when we have that more extensive future ahead of us, our goals are different. We are probably more likely to not only spend time with our friends, but to meet other people, to meet acquaintances, maybe to even spend time with acquaintances, because really the focus is on gaining more information, more knowledge about the world. Maybe we're still engaging in some identity formation, especially if we're, adolescents, young adults. So that's why we might expect to see younger people spend time with a greater range of people that they are close to or not as close to. Whereas as we're getting older, especially once we get into older adulthood, that changes. So now there isn't as much of a focus on acquiring new information, but to really satisfy our emotional needs of just getting to spend time with the people we care about. So with older adults, we're likely going to see that their friend group is smaller, but they're spending the time with the people that they actually really care about.
Right. So it's not the quantity that matters, but the quality.
Exactly.
Right. So if we look at an older adult and we think, well, they only hang out with like 4 or 5 people, and we think that we would be sad if that was us, that's not necessarily true. And so there's a difference between like the amount of people you're hanging out with and whether you're actually lonely or missing anything.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like 2 to 3 really good friends sounds a lot better than a ton of people you barely know, right?
Right. And that's the idea that older adults are like, well, I don't necessarily need to just meet all of these different people that I may or may not see again. Like, I'd rather spend my time being with somebody I know I really enjoy being with and value that time. And that then is really beneficial overall for their life satisfaction and quality of life because they're enjoying that time.
Yeah. I remember reading about, I think it was called the U-shaped curve of happiness. So this idea that I guess happiness drops in middle age and comes up in older adulthood. Is that true? That would indicate, I guess, that actually the middle of our lives is when we're the least happy.
Yeah. So there are some different, some inconsistencies, I guess I'll say, in terms of the data for that. But it does hit on some very real points. The fact that in middle adulthood, we refer to middle-aged adults as the sandwich generation because they are generally caring for their younger children who are still growing up. They're still being raised. But then they may also need to be providing care for their aging parents. So they're kind of stuck in the middle with their kids and their parents as the bread to whatever is in the middle of the sandwich for them.
All right.
I'm not going to say what's in the middle. I don't know, vegetarian, meat eater. And so that can be a lot. That can be a really stressful time. And so, indeed, we can maybe see that maybe life satisfaction might be a bit lower, stress might be a bit higher during that time because of the fact that on top of being maybe in a career, they're also providing care for a variety of people. And then, you know, kind of as some of those roles lessen, we can see that life satisfaction increase again. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So actually that means that it might be something to look forward to. If right now you feel like you're having to do 5,000 things at once,
right?
That it may all calm down and got more time to pursue your hobbies that you're interested in.
Yep.
How does retirement play into that? I assume that's a big shift in people's lives.
It is. It is. And retirement can be a challenge, especially as time is going on. We're seeing changes with retirement and what it looks like. So it's very different now from, a few decades ago. So generally people are working a bit longer just because they're needing to work for longer.
Sure. Yeah.
And then what happened post-retirement isn't as clear-cut anymore. So previously, people would retire and then maybe stop working and just engage in some fun activities that they enjoy. Whereas now we're seeing some people might actually stay in that same role, but in a part-time way. Or we're seeing some people actually going back and starting a whole new career. We also definitely see people who retire and then relax, maybe take the time to enjoy the hobbies they like. Some people will then go back and volunteer in different ways.
Take on caregiving responsibilities.
So it really isn't just like one sort of process.
Is there evidence on like which is better?
That's a good question. I don't know necessarily that one route is better. It likely is going to depend on the person and what they get satisfaction from most of the time. We do know that retirement itself can be a process. Generally, there's kind of this honeymoon phase of like, I'm done from work. I can relax. I can sleep in. I don't have all of this extra stress. But then after a while, we start to miss having a routine of sorts. We probably miss not seeing our coworkers anymore. And so that's where there's kind of this lull then, and maybe a dip in some of that satisfaction. And so then from there, that might be when people decide, I'm actually going to go back and start this new job, or I'm now going to volunteer. And so then they can build back to kind of finding a new routine or something that gives them satisfaction again. But it can be a process. Exceptions to that is if somebody was in like a really demanding or very stressful job. Usually once retirement hits, there's going to be an increase in satisfaction from that without maybe that lull. But yeah, so it's a very sort of intricate change retirement is, and then kind of deciding what to do after that.
Yeah. Obviously, my husband's in the military currently, and so he's going to retire earlier than most people do. And so I'm thinking about this. He's told me that he doesn't plan on just giving up work, so he's going to try and do another career or a whole other thing. But I'm starting to think that's more common now, that people are, like you say, retiring and having a whole second life, essentially. Doing something else entirely.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting, and I like how you use the phrase lull. Because, that's almost like being in your 20s again, right? And having to figure out what you want to do. And we all know that was a challenging time for us. So, like, then you gotta do it again. But it's nice to think that it's a temporary blip while you figure it out.
Right.
And not like, oh, now I'm sad.
Yeah. Right, exactly. It definitely doesn't have to stay that way. And generally, people enjoy getting to carry over some of the roles they previously had, like in middle age, to carry it on to some extent as they're getting older too. So, it can look different for everybody, but it does completely make sense that, I don't know if I should say his name, but that your husband, wants to explore those options too.
Yeah. And it's interesting you say some people like to continue the same thing. So my mom, who shout out, listens to all of these episodes, she was a secretary in her work, and now she's retired, but she still does note taking for certain community groups that she's a part of, and so she still uses her skills that she's used for her whole life.
That's
but now,
awesome.
Now for these voluntary positions, and I think that does help us keep some of that identity. We always had this ability, and now we can continue to use it.
Absolutely.
I know professors are weird, so we may never retire.
No,
but a lot of retired professors do keep their hand in and still do things. And I hope that I'll be able to do that as well. And
right.
Because it is really, for most of us, I think our jobs are quite an important part of who we are.
Absolutely.
And so keeping some strands of that as we retire seems really important.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, thank you for busting some myths. Before I get you to go, though, so I'm hoping that one of the things this episode will do is firstly correct some attitudes potentially about aging, but also want to sort of push back against sort of this stigma of aging. So I wonder if we can talk briefly about ageism and where these negative attitudes of our older generations come from. Could you speak to that a little?
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's definitely something very prevalent in a lot of different cultures.
Oh, really?
Yeah, including our own. This focus on being young and being youthful. And so we get it, or we kind of internalize these views because we're seeing different sorts of aspects related to that in different ways. So within the media, different shows that we see, and the actors and actresses, what they look like, all of the different sorts of cosmetic procedures that can be done, all of the different anti-aging treatments or products that exist, and greeting cards. There are all kinds of quote unquote over the hill jokes or cards about getting older and how they're supposed to be funny about how all of these things change in a negative way, or things we can't do anymore. But it's still getting at that point that, oh, so you're saying that as I get older, I can't do this, or whatever it may be. So honestly, in a lot of different areas, we're getting this information. And especially from a young age, it's something that we may internalize and then build on as we do get older. So again, I think that's where I'm biased, but where really thinking about views of aging and trying to focus on targeting negative views of aging to make them more positive is so important.
Right. Yeah, because it's not just how we treat our older generations when we're young, but also how we're essentially treating our future selves, right? If I have a negative view of aging, that turns into self-hatred, presumably, as you get older, and that sounds pretty darn terrible.
Right. Yeah, I don't want that. I don't want that for you, for me, for anybody. And there's an interesting statistic. Margie Lackman has done a lot of research in the area, and she found that people who have negative views of aging on average those with positive views of aging live on average about 7.5 years more or longer than people with a negative view of aging. Yeah. So again, just that's trying to highlight the point. Those negative views really impact all aspects of our health behaviors, even to the point of survival and mortality rates.
Yeah, so. That's a pretty shocking statistic.
I know,
there.
yeah.
So again, it's not just aging; it's how we think about aging that matters.
Yep.
All right. So if there was one thing that you wanted to tell people, to help them have a more positive view of aging, what would that thing be?
I think the big point is just kind of pushing it back against some of these ideas of when we're younger, that's a better time, or youthfulness is good. Why? When we know that there are these other positive pieces of getting older, we can still do things. It might look a little bit different from how we used to do something, but that doesn't mean it's bad. I mean, we're constantly changing and growing across our entire lifespan. So I think just really try to be aware of when you see those greeting cards or when you see that anti-aging product on a commercial, really think about it. Like, wow, I have seen this commercial 5 times in this 30-minute span. How is that impacting my thought process? Am I feeling like, ooh, I should maybe start using one of those, or I need to learn more about it? Or like, am I laughing at that age-related joke? What is that meaning? So I think really just trying to be more aware of how much it's in our society, how much on a day-to-day basis we may experience that, and kind of push back against it.
Yeah. I'm thinking, we talked a little earlier about emotional regulation, and I'm thinking, I'm in my middle ages now, that there were things I can do now that I couldn't do. Like I don't fly off the handle as easily. I can be a bit more calm in situations. Yeah. And I'm not sure I'd want to go necessarily back to when my hormones were all over the place. And maybe in another 40 years, I'll look back at my midlife and be like, yeah, that was tough. I had lots of things to balance.
Right.
And so there are a lot of things that get better.
Absolutely. I think I'm happy to hear that just because that is what my research is about. But it's also true. As great as each of the life stages is, there can be some negative aspects, but that can be true for any of the life stages we're in. Absolutely. So good and bad, pros and cons, but there is always room for change and for us to adapt and learn and grow.
Wonderful. I love that positive note we're finishing on, Abby. So thank you so much again for coming in and talking to me and busting some aging myths.
Thank you for having me. I loved it.
Psychology and Stuff is brought to you by Good Cause Productions at the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay. The executive producer is Ryan Martin, the production manager is Rachel Sankey, and our creative director is Jenny Young. The media engineer for this episode is Rachel Sankey, supported by our technical director, Kennedy Punke. Special thanks to my guest today, Dr. Abigail Nehrkorn-Bailey. If you haven't already, please make sure to rate, review, and subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform. I'm your host, Alison Jane Martingano. Keep being amazing.